The ability to double the attack or defense of a monster is one of the least common ways to buff stats in Yu-Gi-Oh! And in this video, we're going over the best cards that can make monsters twice as big as usual. Starting us off at number 10, we have Megamorph. This is an equip spell that doubles the equipped monster's attack while your life points are lower than your opponent's, but halves it instead if they're higher. The second part of this effect gives the card some extra utility since you can equip it to an opponent's monster to beat over it by battle as well. But the reason why this card's on this list is because Megamorph was one of the best OTK enablers back in the day, seeing lots of play in Yu-Gi-Oh's early history. The original combo was to play Megamorph together with Cyberstein, which has the effect to pay 5,000 life points to special summon a fusion monster from your extra deck. You'd be bringing out either Cyber Twin Dragon, a double attacker, or Cyber End Dragon, a huge behemoth with piercing damage instead. Due to Cyberstein cutting your life points, these would be at 5,800 attack and 8,000 attack respectively. These kinds of OTK setups were unheard of in early Yu-Gi-Oh! And quickly led to Cyberstein getting limited and then banned. Shortly after this, Megamorph would see play again in Demise decks. Demise could pay 2,000 life points to destroy all of the cards in the field, which would enable your Megamorph, and then you could metamorphosis Demise into Cyber Twin Dragon for an OTK. This even led to the card getting limited for a while, but this card has seen pretty much no play since then, and that's why it's the last spot on this list. Following at number 9, there's Limiter Removal, a quick play spell that doubles the attack of all machine monsters you control until the end of the turn, but also those monsters all get destroyed in the end phase. Limiter Removal was another notable OTK enabler from early Yu-Gi-Oh!, except it was generally much better than Megamorph, securing itself an almost permanent slot on the limited list all the way until the Link era. This card worked with all the previous Cyberstein setup since all monsters involved were machines. Limiter Removal being a quick play spell gave it much more flexibility as well, since you could just hold it into your hand until the damage step, where the most commonly played removal was unable to be used. The downside of losing all of your monsters in the end phase generally didn't matter, since you were usually killing your opponent the turn it was activated. If you were in a less favorable position though, it could be used defensively during your opponent's turn like a battle trap. While Megamorph fell out of the meta with new releases, this card only got better. Cyber Dragon saw near universal play in main and side decks for ages and worked really well with it. Gadgets liked ways to close out games, and so it really appreciated it. The Machina cards worked really well with it too, due to how huge Machina Fortress was already. Karakuri, Cleafort, Cosmos, pretty much every deck with big machines used to at least consider this card, even if it sees no play nowadays. And at number 8, we have Salamangreat Violet Chimera, a Cyberse fusion that takes a Salamangreat monster and a Link monster as materials. It has a grand total of 3 different effects, which are all attack related. When it's fusion summoned, it can gain attack equal to half the attack of the materials used until the end of the turn. During battle, if it battles a monster whose current attack is different than its original attack, it can double its attack during the damage calculation. Also, if it was made using another Salamangreat Violet Chimera, it can also make an opponent's monster's attack 0 during damage calculation. This card used to see a lot of play during the TOS format a couple years ago, where Thunder Dragon, Orcus, Sky Striker, and Salamangreat dominated. It was never used due to its effects, even if being a quite good OTK tool was appreciated, but rather as a super polymerization target against Salamangreat. Super Poly allows you to use your opponent's monsters for fusion summons, so you could use it to remove Salamangreat Link monsters out of the field, which would turn off the deck's powerful back row, Salamangreat Rage and Roar. The deck was so prevalent back then that Violet Chimera saw more play than Diplexer, which had even more generic materials of just 2 Cyberse monsters. Violet Chimera was one of those pieces of support whose existence actually made the deck worse, like Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. Funnily enough, later on an even better super polymerization target would be released, which could also be used against some combo decks as well, in Earth Golem Adagnister, that also has an effect to double its own attack. And at number 7, we have Trickstar Corobane, a level 5 light fairy with 2 effects. First, if you control no monsters, or all monsters you control are Trickstars, it can special summon itself from the hand. Then, during the damage step, if a Trickstar battles an opponent's monster, you can send it from your hand to the graveyard to make your Trickstar gain attack equal to its original attack. Archetypal Honest-like cards, which can be used during the damage step to boost your monsters, ruled the meta for years during early Yu-Gi-Oh! Bujinji Crane and Blackwing Kalut the Moon Shadow were searchable in the respective decks, and an absolute pain to play around, something which even earned Kalut a place on the ban list. By the time Corobane was released during the Link era, these effects had long been pushed out of the meta, but this card more than made up for it with its other effect. Since it was also an extender as well, Corobane was the first battle hand trap to see play in quite some time. Together with Trickstar Lightstage and Candina, Corobane was part of the best engines in the game for a while, which could put out 2 monsters in the field and give you a spell and trap card removal with the field spell. In dedicated Trickstar decks, it'd be used as a control tool and a finisher once your opponent had been burned enough by the other Trickstar cards. Outside of that, the 2 easy bodies could be used for something like a full Orcus combo through Nightmare Mermaid, or just any generic Link too. And at number 6, we have number 60, Dugares the Timeless, a generic rank 4 that can be made with any 2 level 4 monsters. Its effect is that it can detach 2 materials from it to either skip your next draw phase to draw 2 cards and discard 1, skip your next main phase 1 and special summon a monster from your graveyard in defense position, or skip your next battle phase of the next turn to double the attack of one monster you control until the end of the turn. Dugares was a very welcome addition to the rank 4 pool when it came out, being able to provide amazing utility with all of its effects. The drawbacks don't really matter due to the pace of the game at this point. The advantage you can gain from them more than makes up for it. The draw effect was particularly vicious during games 2 and 3 since it lets you dig for side deck cards in instant win the matchup, such as Anti-Spell Fragrance. It also discard for effect and not cost, so it could be used to trigger stuff like Shadow monsters. Lunalight and rank 4 spam strategy made great use of this revival effect, and you could even use it to bring back Lunalight Kaleidochick for its soft once per turn Foolish Burial effect to extend even further. The attack doubling effect, though the least one used, was still a nice and easy OTK enabler, especially in dinosaur decks, since a Dugares boosted Ultimate Conductor Tyranno could easily dish out over 8,000 points of damage by itself. Following in at number 5, there's Junk Speeder, a level 5 Wind Warrior Synchro that can be made with a Synchron tuner and one or more non-tuners. Junk Speeder has the effect that when Synchro Summon, you can special summon as many Synchron tuner monsters at different levels as possible from your deck in defense position, but it also locks you into Synchros for the rest of the turn. Also, the turn this card was Synchro Summoned, if it battles an opponent's monster, you can double this card's attack until the end of the turn. Junk Speeder can summon up to 5 different monsters from your deck, easily being one of the craziest pieces of legacy support ever to be put into the game, and yet it was quite unplayable until a few years after its release. The first issue is that this card came in the middle of Master Rule 4, where you were limited to putting your synchros in either the extra monster zone or link zones that link monsters pointed to. But this card also locked you out of link summons. When those rules were finally reverted in 2020, this card suffered from having not many great monsters to bring out besides Jet Synchron, a card which would soon be banned because of Christian Hulky Fibrax. At last though, around a year later, a new Synchron support managed to make this card way more powerful than it used to be. This card would finally propel the deck into some decent rogue strategy when coupled together with new powerful Synchrons like Baron de Fleur, which is only really held back by how much of a choke point Junk Speeder is, as you can pretty much stop the whole strategy by just saving your hand trap for Junk Speeder. And finally, at number 4, we have Rise to Full Height. This is a normal trap with the effect to target a monster in the field and double its defense, but it becomes 0 at the end of the turn. It also has a graveyard effect where you can banish it to target a monster you control, and then your opponent can't attack for the rest of this turn unless it's to attack that monster. Rise to Full Heights only ever saw play due to how good its graveyard effect is at keeping you alive for another turn. If the monster you target with it leaves the field, by battle or otherwise, your opponent can't attack you at all for the rest of this turn. This leads to the card seeing play in various mill strategies together with Lightsworns or that Grass Looks Greener as a good trap you could send to the graveyard. Later iterations of Paleozoic decks also made great use of this card though. The Paleos are trap cards which can special summon themselves in the graveyard when another trap is activated. Rise to Full Height was another easily activatable trap card to trigger your Paleozoics, since you could use it as soon as there was a monster in the field. It was also a great way to protect the rest of your board in case you had multiple trap monsters out. Since the Paleos are unaffected by monster effects, they're usually removed by battle. These decks also often ran Needlebug Nests, a card that just mills 5 from the top of your deck, and has as much synergy with the Paleozoics as it has with Rise to Full Height. And at number 3, we have number 1, Numeron Gate Ekam. This card and all of the other Numeron Gates all have the same effects and summoning condition. They must be made each with 3 level 1 monsters, cannot be destroyed by battle, and at the end of the damage step, if it battles an opponent's monster, you can detach material to double the attack of all of the Numeron monsters until the end of the turn. These gates all make part of a quite easy to access OTK strategy, since just attacking all 4 of them into a monster will eventually let you hit for 8,000 points of damage. It's actually extremely easy to summon all 4 of them out at once, since you just need to activate Numeron Network while having Numeron Calling in your deck. That card even has an archetypal searcher in Numeron Wall that doubles as a battle fader, not to mention generic field spell searchers like Terraforming. It does bring that out without materials, but it also lets your Numeron monsters activate their effects without having to pay the detach costs. The only restriction is that you can only special summon once after you bring out all the gates, so you can't just use them for extra deck spam. Ekam was chosen because despite all of the gates having the same effect, Ekam is the only one that can be used to summon Sunya, which can banish all monsters in the field and then come back to the next standby phase to inflict burn damage. The deck was quite popular for a while in the OCG, especially mixed with Eldritch and Dragoon. It's also a very popular laddering deck in Master Duel due to how quickly it can chew through games. Numeron ended up not being that played in the TCG however, but for a short amount of time, you could use the gates to bring out number as 0 Utopic Zexal, which can completely lock your opponent out of card effects, since it wasn't banned yet. And at number 2, we have Gigantic Spright. The rank 2 from the new Thunder archetype, Spright, it can be made with any 2 level 2 monsters, but also link 2 monsters can be treated as level 2 for this card's XC summon. Its effect lets you detach a material from a monster you control to special summon any level 2 monster from your deck, and then neither player can special summon except level, rank, and link 2 monsters for the rest of the turn. Also, if it has another extract monster underneath it as a material, its original attack is doubled. Gigantic is one of the best Xyz monsters printed in recent memory. It's completely generic when it comes to materials, and the alternative summoning condition lets you make it by just managing to resolve Kriston Halki Fibrax and bringing out a level 2 tuner from your deck. It lets you bring out any level 2 monster from the deck, making it the perfect enabler for whatever level 2 engine you want to use on your end board, be them frogs, Melfi, or live twins. Also, since it applies the summoning restriction to both you and your opponent, you can't get hit by the usual anti-hand trap combo in Nibiru, since it's a level 11 monster itself. But even though its ability to double its own attack is eclipsed by its other effects, it's still very relevant in Spright decks. Since you lock yourself into monsters above Link 2, you can't just climb into Access Code Talker like you would in other decks. Instead, one of the best ways for Spright to put out lethal damage on board is to have Gigantic Spright with 3200 attack, due to having a Link monster underneath it, side by side with Cat Shark, another rank 2 that can double the original attack of a rank 4 or lower monster you control. Gigantic modifies its original attack with its boost, and so Cat Shark can make it hit for a whopping 6400 damage. And lastly, at number 1, we have number 39 Utopia Double. Now, what isn't more fitting than the first on this list having the word double in its name? This is a rank 4 Xyz that can be made with any 2 level 4 monsters. Utopia Double has a single effect, where it can, on a quick effect, detach one material from itself to add double or nothing from your deck to your hand. Then rank itself into any other Utopia Xyz monster, and then its attack becomes doubled, but it can't attack directly. And Double or Nothing is a quick play spell card that can only be activated when attack is negated, and it lets that monster attack again while also doubling that monster's attack during the damage step. This card is used as a combo piece in Utopia decks to access the high rank Utopia monsters, such as Utopia Dragonar, but that's not the main reason why it saw so much play. Utopia Double has been played competitively as one of the most vicious OTK enablers in the whole game. Despite needing Double or Nothing as a garnet to make it work, this card was still a frequent inclusion in level 4 decks as an easy way to close out games, such as Trap Tricks, Lunalight, and even Sky Strikers. You rank into number 39 Utopia, which now has 5000 attack due to Double's effect. Then, after swinging into a monster, you use Utopia's effect to negate your own attack, allowing you to activate Double or Nothing from your hand to attack again for 10,000 points of damage. Essentially allowing you to win out of nowhere as long as your opponent had a monster with 2000 or less attack out on the field, which made this package more than worth playing. Even though it's not as popular anymore, this was the most competitive card to ever see play solely due to its ability to double attack twice. And that's why it's the first slot of this list. Alright, and that's the list. If you happen to know of any other cards that double stats or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments.